Hey, welcome back to the Business Emergency Room. I'm extra excited today because this is the first episode of Season 2. Season 2 is an upgrade in technology, and hopefully you can hear that in the audio. But more importantly, we'll be adding at your request, or many of your requests, video finally. So the podcast is now also available on YouTube. So if that's your preferred medium to consume, then you can switch over. And on top of that, we are going to continue with the same great type of content and guests and the same host, but we are including some of the learnings from season 1. So yeah, taking it up a notch and excited that you are back. Leadership today isn't just about scaling. It's about navigating constant uncertainty, market disruptions, and high-pressure decisions. If you're dealing with chaos, bottlenecks, and relentless pressure, welcome to the Business Emergency Room. Today's episode is about tackling fast decision-making in volatile situations. The kind where you don't have time for a deep dive, yet the wrong move could send everything sideways. And what better way to illustrate that than my own personal chaos from this week. As many of you know, I'm based in New Orleans, and it's currently just days before the Super Bowl, which means absolute mayhem in this city. For those of you who don't know that much about New Orleans is only the 50th city in the US in terms of size. So it's only about 350,000 people. And the larger metropole is only 1 million. So as a metropole, that still only makes it 50th in the country also. Not big at all. And yes, we have Mardi Gras and Jazz Fest and many major events. Many of those events are for majority consumption, our own population. And yes, we have huge amount of tourism into this city, but the Super Bowl is entirely of a different scale, of course. And then on top of that, we had the very unfortunate events, or the tragic events on January 1st, where somebody drove a truck into a group of revelers on Bourbon Street on New Year's Day morning. And on top of that, then our president announced that he was going to attend the Super Bowl only earlier this week. So, organizing a Super Bowl event, one of the biggest sports events in the world in terms of money involved and complexity, etc. Then, all these added security challenges, of course, don't make it any easier. And although the city has hosted Super Bowls before, this is not something any of us are used to, and so we're not also very intimately familiar with how all of this is going to work. So we went yesterday, my family and I, to the Super Bowl experience. And let's just say that turned into a textbook example of bad decision-making in the moment. And you might be wondering, why should I care? Because what happened to us yesterday happens in business every single day. And today I'll break down exactly what went wrong and what you as a leader and a decision maker and your teams can do to make better decisions in these rapidly unfolding situations. So the story is really a bit of a comedy in errors in decision making, and maybe awareness of what was happening. So we were a bit surprised. We had tickets to this experience event that we weren't so sure what it was. We were somewhat familiar with the venue where it was being held, but no idea what this really was about. We bought the tickets with a very strict time window, and then it's gotten on with life and forgotten about the rest of it. So my husband and I were entirely not on the same page around our assumptions as to how this event was going to work. You have to imagine that this event is held in a building that's over half a mile long, conference center. And so having some idea on which site to enter, for instance, is important in this case. Then we also had different key information. So I had ran into some other parents who were also contemplating going to the event, and they told me what they knew about the event. And my husband, who bought the tickets, had received emails about the event with some specific instructions. Neither of us shared what we learned with each other before we set out. Then, as we're trying to make our way to the event, not entirely sure where we were headed and where we're going to park, etc., we ran into traffic, and then we're suddenly a little bit in panic mode. We saw other friends walking and decided that they probably knew perfectly what they were doing, and so followed their lead without questioning whether any of that was right. We didn't pause to assess or anything. We just reacted. End result, we had to walk well over a mile. Not all 5 of us in the family were dressed for that. And also, we're getting really tight on our time window and barely made it inside. So it all turned out fine, but let's be honest. In business, decision-making doesn't really get a second chance. And so I want to use this example to talk about some of the top tips to deal with decision-making in those kind of chaotic moments. So the first one is about defining the actual decision that you're trying to make before you act. Because what we did is we got in the car and just started driving, thinking, well, we got to get to this event. We got tickets. But we had no conversation about where are we parking, which, made quite a difference to our plans. We had also hadn't really agreed what time we probably needed to leave the house, allowing extra time and stuff. So it turned out we still had a kid at basketball practice 15 minutes before we were supposed to be there, etc. So we hadn't agreed on any of the other details, piled in the car, a bit freaked out, distressed, and started driving. So I'd suggest don't pile in the car and start driving. Before reacting, identify the decision first. What problem are you actually solving? And the parallels I see, for instance, in business is when there is a supplier disruption. So a key supplier falls away or cannot provide enough of the required materials or samples or whatever it is that you're buying from them. And so a switch is made last minute to a different provider or supplier. And all energy and focus is on to finding this alternate supplier. And then when that's sorted, people are like, phew, we made it, right? We limited business disruption. We have an alternate supplier. The challenge is that sometimes we forget how many intricacies are agreed with existing suppliers as to how they provide it, in what type of packaging, in what kind of batches, how they then invoice or specify the paperwork with it, etc. And those don't get translated. So then we get materials from this alternate supplier and it shows up at the wrong place or with the wrong paperwork or with the wrong specs. And so it still ends up disrupting the process, right? It's important in these moments to figure out what else is part of that process and take a pause to actually then say, okay, hold on. Stuff starts showing up the wrong place. What else do we need to decide or problem solve right now? And don't problem solve just the materials are showing up at the wrong place now. No, problem solve this is a different supplier. If the stuff shows up in the wrong place, there might be more challenges with it. So what other checks do we now need to execute? And what else do we maybe need to course correct? Which brings me down to communication. It's very important in unfolding situations that you communicate what you know and what you don't. And the intriguing thing is that what we humans do in situations that we feel we don't know enough about, or if we fall into something unexpected or unknown, we share less because we think we don't know anything. But if you're trying to make decisions on the fly, you need to know which puzzle pieces you have and which puzzle pieces you don't have. So my husband had key information because he'd been told, or he'd received these emails that said, make sure you allow enough time. There's a lot of streets barricaded around the venue. Expect that it takes this much time to get anywhere. really think about where you're going to park. There was even shuttle buses set up, etc., to indicate how large streams of people they were expecting. And I was not aware of this information at all. And I had spent the day before with some other parents, all who were like, yeah, we might go. I'm not really sure. So I'm thinking, it's probably not that busy, or maybe it gets busier closer to the weekend, but not yet when we're going. So my assumptions around this event were quite different. And neither of us had shared that. If we would have put some of those pieces together, we would also have known what we did know and what we didn't know. Because I'm pretty sure that if we had the conversation about saying, oh, we might need to leave early, and it suggests that it's really busy and that you need to might maybe park far away, we would have actually had the conversation on the how and why, and also gotten to the point of saying, hey, we actually don't know on what side of the building we're supposed to get in. So what is then, for instance, a smart parking place? And we'd also probably told everybody not to wear their pretty glitter shoes, but their sneakers in case we needed to walk a lot further, right? So yeah, we didn't really communicate anything until in the moment we drove into the back of the traffic queue. And then my husband was like, yeah, they said it was going to be very busy. And I'm like, how do you mean? I didn't think anyone was going to go. And it's like, how do we know that this traffic's for the event? And so we started arguing because we kind of left last minute and we're already kind of tired after a busy day. Not helpful. If you're trying to make decisions in these unfolding situations, you need to know everybody's puzzle piece, put those on the board, and then you also know where your gaps are. And you might not be able to close the gaps, right? We might not have been able to find out where the entrance was until we got there. But then that's the risk assessment we make. Or we make the best decision in the moment saying, okay, well, we don't know. We might have to walk over half a mile. So let's put on better shoes. In business, this happens too all the time. So in the same example of a vendor disruption, then what I've seen happen is that vendor is not typically just disrupted for you, but has challenges across the board. And so somebody at a more senior level might receive or see the message in the news or receive the message saying, oh, this is all imports of this are stuck, or this vendor's had a major warehouse fire and so their operations are disrupted or whatever. The headline news might make it in at level A. And then, but then that person might not immediately know how it affects operations. What then typically happens is that on their side, on the supplier side, they will, distribute out who's going to contact which companies. And they might contact their standard person, or or might contact whichever phone number they have access to. So in the moment, they might end up calling your accounting department because it's somebody in their finance team, and the only name they have is in your account department to tell them. So you need to bring your people around the table and figure out who's got which pieces of the puzzle. And that conversation starts with you and the leader. If you did find out that you're likely going to be disrupted, is to say honestly, okay, I've just seen this news, so we're likely going to be impacted and I don't know the extent. Who knows what? What do we know? And what can we find out? And then, keep coming back till you feel that that's all the puzzle pieces you're going to get. And then look at what gaps you're left with and then make decisions accordingly, because that's the only way to make the best possible decision in the moment. That brings me to the third one. Don't blindly follow others. They might be wrong too. So yeah, we ended up in an argument in the car and we were already kind of tired and we were like, oh, is this thing even worth it? And it was clear that we are both on very different ends of the spectrum as to what this thing was looking like and where we needed to go. And then we saw friends and we're like, okay, good. We'll just do what they do because then we can stop arguing. But yeah, it turned out that they had no clue either. And maybe had been in a similar situation as us bickering in the car and decided to just leave it at that. But we followed them blindly thinking, oh, at least they know what they're doing. And that, again, happens so often when we run into situations where we're kind of surprised, right? Negatively surprised by something happening that we didn't want, that we weren't looking for. And then it's a little overwhelming because there's so much we don't know and there's so many moving parts. And if you then see somebody that you trust, or see somebody that's like you, or see somebody plotting a course kind of confidently, it's very easy to just think, well, I'll just do what they do. The challenge in business is, if, for instance, again, in the example of the supplier disruption, if you have competitors who then make a certain switch, that doesn't mean that that switch is also good for you, because as a business, you don't have the same end goals in mind. You don't have the same long-term drivers, and you don't have the same relationships. So they might have a better relationship with a certain partner and had an in with somebody, and hence that switching to an alternative might have been beneficial for them. For you, then going blindly to that same party, you might get milked completely at a different price rate, or it might be a technically much inferior product, and so that your quality advantage then subsides. So whatever it is, just because somebody else has chosen that path doesn't mean that that's the best solution. So it's more a pitfall to really look out for. You really want to take a pause and make your own decisions. And yes, you can totally look at what other people are doing, right? Because it might be a smart course and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. But blindly following what somebody else is doing without doing a bit of a sanity check and validating what they're doing before you're copying, not wise. Then tip number 4, you will always hear me talk about decision frameworks, and that I want you to implement one as a code rec to facilitate your decision making, because we have so many biases. At the same time, in a situation that unfolds like this, you're going to have to make some decisions in the moment, right, with incomplete information. And so you're better off picking a path and committing, and then just getting on with it. There is no sense in overthinking things, because if you're not going to get more information, then you're just going to turn around in circles. Then you're effectively more in decision paralysis mode, because there's not going to be more points of data for you to make a better decision. And so pick a path and make it work. In business, indecision is way more dangerous than the wrong decision. So, and the benefit of making a decision is that you will take a step, and with every step you take, you will get progressive insight. So, we kind of committed to a path because we just dumped the car and got out and started walking, and then made that work, right? So, yeah, it wasn't ideal, but we managed to make the solution work, and we had a good event in the end, and we dealt with the discomfort of the too long a hike with the wrong gear, etc. And the thing is, if you pick a path, you can still course correct, right? If you are taking a left and within 3 steps, it's extremely clear that left is not the way to go. You're not so far down the path that starting to cross over to right is impossible, 1. And 2, you also learn why, which probably makes you more effective and quicker in following the path on the right side, because you know clearer the knot of the wrong path. And you learn something in the process. So yeah, typically the path you choose is not entirely the wrong path. I don't see that frequently at all, particularly if your decisions are somewhat small, right? So if I say pick a path and commit to it, I'm assuming that we're not talking about your 10-year plan. I'm talking about a decision to deal with the situation today, right? And that may mean saying, okay, if you have supplier disruption, I don't know what we need to do for the long term. So what we're going to do is supply or coordinate delivery for parts for the next month. We're going to close that gap. That's the project now. And then we're going to do a separate project that sorts out the long-term supply. And we can learn from what we're all getting in that first month. That might need to be much more hands-on to fix the more long-term supply issue. So have a decision, a sensible decision timeline when you do this. Which brings me back to the last tip, which is about stepping back and detaching emotion from the moment. It's so easy in those moments to have emotion turn over and for things to get ugly. We were tired. It'd been a big week. We all clearly got in the car, rushed, fresh off meetings and sports practice and other things. It was evening. We maybe should have eaten more than we did. We were annoyed. And so it led to bad calls. It led to bickering and us being not nice to each other when this was supposed to be a happy family outing thing, right? And it was supposed to be a fun thing. In the moment, when we drove into the back of the traffic jam and realized that we actually weren't really sure of what we're doing or where we're going, we could have pulled over and taken a 30-second pause and say, okay, what are we going to do? Are we going to try and get to the other end? Do we think that this is going somewhere? Instead, it was like, do we get off now? Do we get off now? That doesn't work because that is not conducive to making the best possible decisions in the moment. And we totally had time. We totally could have taken it. And in business, it's the same thing. It's very seldom that it's so life or death that you can't even take a breath. So take a breath, try to remove the emotion, and ask yourself, okay, what's happening? What's the worst that could happen? What is it now that I need to look at? So you see on the news that one of your key suppliers' warehouses just burns down. You've just been growing your business. This is key era for you. Yes, that could be totally panic. There's also not a whole lot that in that moment straight away, if you're watching the evening news in this, you cannot do something so much anyway at that moment, in that moment, right? So take a minute, take a breath. What's the simplest, lowest risk choice? As I said in the previous example, pick a shorter timeline and say, okay, well, let's at least fix the near-term supply. What do I need to not disrupt my business or limit the disruption, right? Which are my key accounts that I definitely need to supply? How much do I need for that? Where is there wiggle room in these timelines? And what of this really matters in an hour or a day of a month? Yeah. So final takeaways for today is that decision making, as always, is a skill you can train. The Super Bowl experience turned out amazing. And we, of course, totally made it there. But yeah, this is not a business situation, right? It was more luck and it was not a strategy. And in business, we can't rely on things turning out kind of okay by accident. So if you take nothing else from this episode, I would like you to remember that slow is smooth and smooth is fast. In these situations where the unexpected happens or where you're running into something where which not your norm, so you don't have all the facts, you may never have all the facts, just a bit more cautiously keep plotting a course forward, and you will get there. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. 2, remember the puzzle pieces. Share what you know. Assumption kills clarity. So share what you know so that make others share what they know. So you know this, you have the maximum amount of facts you can have access to and information, and also where your biggest gaps are and hence your risks so that you can decide accordingly. And then pick a course, commit, start taking action, and you will get progressive insight to move gradually faster and faster and solve and get out of the situation that you're in. Making fast, confident decisions under pressure is totally a muscle you can build. So yeah, let's get practicing today. Thank you for tuning in today. I hope you will check out the YouTube channel. And if you have other ideas, suggestions, requests for season 2, I would love to hear them. I hope to see you or hear you back here next week. Thanks. Thanks for tuning in to the Business Emergency Room. If today's episode hit home, let me know. Leave a review and tell me what challenges you're facing. Your feedback helps shape future episodes. So drop a comment or a message on LinkedIn with what's keeping you up at night.